This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome. Episode 611. I'm Catherine Inskip, your editor and host. As it's Halloween week, we're doing something a little different. We're taking curtains out trick-or-treating. There's still a little bit of light in the sky, and we're feeling pretty bold, so what better place to start than the super spooky pseudopod towers? Keep your eyes peeled for tentacles.
Welcome to hell, in your ears, in podcast form. It will be disturbing. Turn back lest ye be disturbed.
Pseudopod, episode 945 for October 28th, 2024. The Gobstomper by Alex Dal Piaz. Narrated by Alex Hofflick, hosted by Kat Day, with audio by Chelsea Davis. Hey everyone, hope you're all doing okay. I'm Kat, assistant editor at Pseudopod, your host for this episode, and I'm excited to tell you that today we're bringing you The Gobstomper by Alex Dal Piaz. Why? Hello, curtains.
Trick or treat!
Oh, trick or treat, is it? Are you sure you want to ask us that? Really? Us? It's your funeral. Let's see what we have here. How about The Gobstomper by Alex Dal Piaz. Alex Dal Piaz is a speculative fiction writer from New York, with recent and upcoming work in Seaside Gothic magazine and the Other Stories podcast. He's been all over the world and visited almost every US state, and learned that even the plainest spots have fantastic tales to tell. This story is narrated by Alex Hofflick, who's co-editor of Pseudopod. You can find him at tiki bars, local bookstores, microbreweries, and family-owned eateries. Like most tigers, Alex is made up of dragonflies and katydids, but mostly chewed-up little kids. Alex started assisting Pseudopod in 2009, was brought on as an associate editor in 2011, and became assistant editor in 2013. He joined Sean Garrett as co-editor in 2015. He is currently serving as president of the Atlanta chapter of the Horror Writers Association, and he's a regular host of their Southern Nightmare reading series. Now, before we go any further, this episode has content warnings for dentists and tooth trauma. How many sweeties have you eaten this week? Well, we have a treat for you. And we promise you, it's true.
The Gobstomper by Alex Dal Piaz. Narrated by Alex Hofflick. A lot changes as you get older, thought Wilkie Saunders. For example, he'd been sure older boys like Tom Dunn, who was either in 10th or 11th grade, depending on if you counted the year he was repeating, hated his guts. Tom had tormented Wilkie and his friends every which way for years, and yet here they all were in the dark. Tom and Wilkie and half a dozen other older boys gathered up behind the home of the local dentist. This was small-town Indiana, and not the best parts of it. The house of the dentist was plenty run down. Perhaps not as much as the other homes along the street, but its peeling dish sponge blue paint was enough to make Wilkie feel antsy. Outside was a shingle-style sign, dismally busy with fancy script, advertising the services within. What's so special about a dentist? Wilkie asked. Like I said, he deals sweets to make extra money, drawled out Tom Dunn. And if you shut up for a sec, you'll hear it. And then, with the very weirdness the boys had promised, Wilkie heard it. A slurping and gasping sound. And maybe crying? The hell is that? Wilkie asked. Tears of joy. It's the Gobstomper, sweetest and most delicious candy on earth. Kids pay $100 for it. Of course, if you can't pay, he does give it away. But one night only, On Halloween, like I said, and to one person only. That could be you, Wilkie, Tom said, as if he didn't believe a word of it. Of course, you'd have to keep your cool, and you can only have the candy in the house. It's a recipe too valuable to let out. Think you can do that? Think you can hang with us now? How good can it be? Asked Wilkie. Well, see, that's the kind of doubting thing that's just like a kid to say. Let me ask you, you ever had chicken soup from a can? Yeah. And you've got Grandma, who's definitely made the same soup for you straight from scratch herself, right? Yeah, sure. Well, you tell me if one had anything to do with the other. See? Now you've had plenty of candy that comes from giant factories, but you've never had nothing like this homemade Gobstomper. None of us had, until we did. Hey, listen. The boys fell silent. Sounds had started back up within the house. Wilkie listened alongside the boys to the gasping, creeping gurgles, which sounded half like someone was handling the world's cutest kitten, and half like the kitten was digging in its thin claws into the tender part of your arms. Wilkie tried to imagine what such an overwhelming candy might taste like. Then he nodded. And that was all it took. He'd meet the boys back here at the house tomorrow night, on Halloween. Come alone, they said. Halloween in the small town of Amiola wasn't much to look at. There were some scattered pumpkins and streamers, but more houses with lights off than on. The whole thing felt like something over already, like you'd arrived a day late for it. Some smaller kids pattered around with their folks near sunset, but enthusiasm didn't run much later than that. It made Wilkie happy that he had his own plans, like a proper 7th grader ought to. His parents hadn't even batted an eye when he said he'd be out with the older boys till at least 10 p.m. Wilkie knew his Halloween wouldn't start until 9, when he was to approach and knock on the dentist's door. By 8:50, Wilkie was already in the street, hurrying through the dark towards the dentist's house and avoiding the working streetlights, just as the boys had instructed. People around town said the sandy-haired dentist was unusual, but Wilkie had seen him before at the market and had always thought he seemed plenty normal. The front door of the dentist's house was solid metal, without any windows. Wilkie approached on the quiet of the grass, avoiding the stone path. The boys had insisted on a special knock. 32 taps, one for each tooth in his mouth. He was midway through this when he heard footsteps behind the door, falling in rhythm with his tapping. As he finished, the door swung open. It was the young dentist. He was dressed as one. Trick or treat, Wilkie offered. Yes, of course, the dentist replied. Why don't you come in? He pulled a basket of sweets off the side table in the hallway and backed away deeper into the house. Wilkie stepped over the threshold. The door closed behind him and the dentist spoke into the resulting quiet. Something tells me you're here for something better than these candies. Wilkie nodded. The Gobstomper is what I was told. It was... A delighted smile opened across the young dentist's face, as if Wilkie had recalled for him the name of a dear friend. Yes, of course, the Gobstomper. Wilkie nodded again, a little unsure. Well, can you help me with that? It's not myself that deals with this. No, it's Dentist Senior, as we call him. Would you like to meet him now? Okay. Wilkie shrugged stiffly, so stiffly that he suddenly wished that he could disappear in plain sight like a mouse does. But Wilkie could only stand where he was. The young dentist stepped forward, gathering Wilkie around the shoulders, revealing a battered door at the end of the hallway behind him. The door was peeling with paint, and the shape of its hinges was distorted with rust. The frosted glass on the door was lit from within by a single yellowed bulb. Wilkie gasped. Old block letters across the glass spelled out, Dental treatment. Inquire within. Shall we? Right this way. He prodded Wilkie forward and prompted him to knock. As Wilkie hesitated, the young dentist rapped on the door very hard and fast. From behind it, the floorboards began to creak, so deeply that even the ones under Wilkie's feet shifted. And then the door was opened. Standing before Wilkie was a man of great height, so tall that Wilkie felt like he himself had shrunk down. But he hadn't. He couldn't, even though he desperately wished he could. Wilkie was stuck completely where he was. The tall man was pale, like flour, and had something tar black in his hands, a rubber contraption with holes for eyes, but none for the mouth. From where the mouth would be, instead, extended a ringed tube, which connected to a canister at the man's side, held by a strap over his shoulder. And then the man spoke, weakly, in an exhale. "Oh, child, are you here for something sweet, are you? The Gobstomper?" Wilkie nodded weakly. "Have you ever played hide-and-seek?" asked the man, laying a hand as heavy as a backpack on Wilkie's shoulder. I don't like it. Not really." "That's okay. Know what makes it much better? A mask." Wilkie mouthed the air, not knowing what to say, and turned back towards the younger dentist. "Thank him. Tell him it's why you came." It's why I came. Thanks." Pale man smiled through broken teeth and panted as he stretched the mask open with bony fingers. "Then come. Count 60, and the Gobstomper will find you easy." The man lifted the mask. Whoa, wait, where is it?" "Why, it's in this can," said the old man, showing Wilkie the canister. "Like a genie's lamp, I only need to rub it, and presto." You promise, and it's really good and sweet, this candy?" Wilkie forced out nervously, as though this negotiation might assure him of something. Both dentists spoke with great assurance. "Oh, yes. Children weep with joy at it. It is handmade." And while the older man was still speaking, the young dentist brought the mask down over Wilkie's eyes and tied up against his face. The old man reached and turned a wheel on the canister. Wilkie gasped. Sound and sweetness surged into the mask. Wilkie tried to hold his breath, but failed and took a huge breath in. "Your Gobstomper soon arrives." A chalky darkness came over Wilkie. He breathed raggedly and was gathering himself to say something. It was in this moment, then, that he first felt there was something in his mouth. Between the surging saliva, there was something hard, but also soft, which seemed to mold into place. His tongue played at a kind of ball or square forming in his mouth. He looked up in confusion, through the eye holes, scanning the fish-eyed view of the two figures bent within the dim room. Then he felt it, unmistakably. His teeth, softening, melting across their bottoms, dripping like wax candles, weeping down into his mouth. Wilkie started to yell. The old dentist turned a different wheel on the canister and the pitch of the gas altered. Wilkie screeched, but the mass in his mouth puffed rapidly like a marshmallow, growing larger and then also stiffer and then firmer. The object soon so large that it took up almost the whole of his mouth and pried his jaws painfully apart. And the more Wilkie tried to chew it down, the harder it got. Wilkie screamed and blubbered. He hummed distress hard under the rubber mask. Then, seemingly mercifully, the gas seized and the mask was torn forwards off his head. He screeched, but barely, as his mouth was jacked open by the ball that had formed within it. Saliva poured from him, and it was all he could do to sip air at the corner of his lips. Now the old man yelled, "Boy, do you renounce sugar and all corrupting evils like that?" Wilkie looked up, unbelieving, but he perceived what was being said as it was repeated at twice the volume, and he hummed yes rapidly and slammed his head up and down in nodding too. As he did, the old man brought up his wide hand, full of a white powder, and he blew the contents into Wilkie's face. Wilkie screamed, but then realized it was sugar, powdered and fine. He wanted to weep, that this was all it was. And he tasted it, yes, sugar, but at the sweetness of it, saliva flooded into his mouth, filling the little space for air choking him. Wilkie bent forward shrieking, trying to let the wetness drain from his mouth, trying to breathe. Do you really renounce it, boy? Or are you just a common fibber? Wilkie moaned as clear as he could that he understood. No more sugar. Never again. Halloween was nothing anyway. It was never anything in Amiola. He wished he could tell them both. Then Wilkie heard something, even louder, outside the house. Laughter from beneath the floor. He recognized it. The older boys. But he had no moment to think. The younger dentist brought a sharp-edged and shining metal instrument around in front of Wilkie's face. Wilkie would have screamed again, but his lungs demanded all of his breath. I can take care of this, remarked the dentist, pricking at the mass within Wilkie's mouth. Wilkie nodded as fast as he could again, hoping this was the end, and especially feeling so when the old man relented and spoke in dreary tones. The easy part is done. Wilkie kept nodding in agreement. Yes, too bad penitence is never easy, said the younger dentist. I can remove this awful toothal mass, but the prognosis is very poor, young man. You will need to come back for more work. Much more work to come. Fillings, crowns, root canals, braces, dentures. So much work to restore this damage which you've done. This is what you will tell your parents about the very sweet dentist, the only one you can trust. This is what you will do. Do you understand? Or do you want sugar? Much more sugar? The old man brought up his overflowing hand again, forcing white powder roughly into Wilkie's open mouth. Scream if you understand, the dentist commanded as sugar bloomed into the air everywhere around them. Gagged with suffocation, Wilkie still heard the rising chatter of the men and the laughter of the boys beneath the house, and in a frenzy, he struggled to scream louder than them all. That he'd do it! He'll do it! He would!
That was horrible. You know those dreams you get where your teeth start to fall apart in your mouth? That's not just me, right? Everyone gets those. Well, if you could package that up as a story, it might look something like this. I don't think anyone enjoys going to the dentist, but this almost makes my teeth ache in terror. The way the Gobstomper is described is so visceral, so sweet and inevitable. Ugh. And yet, I'm torn as to what's more horrific. Sadistic dentists that trap you in a costly cycle of pain and fear? Or the bullies outside who'll be there tormenting you day after day? Thank you, Pseudopod. I hope your listeners enjoyed it as much as we did.
What did you think of The Gobstomper by Alex Dalpiaz, brilliantly narrated by Alex Hofflick? If you're a Patreon subscriber, we encourage you to pop over to our Discord channel and tell us. As soon as I read this story, I was reminded of the TV show Erie, Indiana, which in my head was on television in the 1980s and had lots and lots of episodes. I'm reliably informed it actually first aired in the US late in 1991, and only 19 episodes were actually produced, although there was a later spin-off series. Here endeth the lesson on the flawed and fractured nature of memory and nostalgia. But anyway, for anyone who missed this show, possibly due to not having been born when it was first aired, it featured a teenager whose family moves to the desolate town of, yes, Erie, Indiana, population 16,661. Do you get it? He immediately runs into all kinds of strange scenarios, including Bigfoot, a very much alive Elvis Presley, magic Tupperware containers that keep everything fresh forever. It will probably not surprise anyone to learn that younger me loved this show. Which brings me to this story. Small town Indiana, you say? A group of teenagers poking around in probably supernatural goings-on and coming to a, forgive me, sticky end, you say? Perfect, let's go! And Alex Dalpiaz does not disappoint. Oh, and by the way, quick aside, the town in this story is called Amiola, which the internet tells me is Nigerian for unexplained or possibly eerie. So I'm pretty certain our author knows his references too. This piece is a classic of the genre. Boy facing peer pressure, encouraged to do something he knows he probably shouldn't. Tick. A forbidden and obviously dangerous, but also entirely irresistible prize. Tick. A creepy house. Tick. Horrifying dentistry. Tick, tick, tick. What is the Gobstomper made of, Wilkie? What is it made of? That's the question that might have saved him, and he does not ask it. I've thought about this a lot lately. We often do forget to ask the questions that might save us, don't we? We're shown a new cool thing and told it can do everything, including the kitchen sink. It will make you a brilliant new kitchen sink out of shiny amethyst dragon scales. It's wonderful. Look, look. And there's often not enough. Might this be dangerous? Might it be? I don't know. Eating the planet, one huge slobbering crunch at a time. Is it possible that we're going to find ourselves having to go through a lot of pain and trauma and expense to restore the damage which we've done? Never mind, look, purple dragon sink! We are telling this story now, and similar stories were being told 30 years ago, and have been told in different ways by different people over and over again, long, long before that. Rushing into things is human nature, and will probably always be human nature. The people who actively refuse to pause and think are probably not storytellers. They're probably not even story listeners. But we do what we can. We tell stories, and we hope. As our usual host, Alistair, he'll be here soon for our traditional Halloween episode, by the way, said to me the other day, we like to hope. It's better to hope. Alistair is extremely kind and very wise, and I value his words very much. Thanks, Al. So, ask the questions, keep asking them. We can only hope that a few more people realise that we can't trust the very sweet dentist, and we don't actually need, much less want, more sugar.
The candy in our plastic pumpkin doesn't seem quite so appealing after that story. But I'm sure that'll wear off soon. Join us again tomorrow for another trick-or-treating expedition. We love bringing you the best audio fiction week after week, but we can't do it without your support. Your donations pay our authors, our narrators, our servers and our staff. Please consider supporting us with a monthly donation through either PayPal or Patreon. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts, request us on Spotify, and consider the stories we publish for award consideration. There are lots of ways you can help. Join the discussion on the EA Discord and visit on social media at Cast of Wonders. Come say hello. Cast of Wonders is brought to you by editor Catherine Inskip, assistant editor Alicia Caparasso, associate editors Rebecca Arn, Tanya Adelit, Amy Brennan, Somtoa Haysway, Cup Jacob, Becca Miles, Ray O, Samuel Poots, Pooja Prakabaran, Emma Smales, Denise Sudal and Rin Yi. Our editorial assistant is Amy Brennan, our community manager is Denise Sudal, and our audio producer is Jeremy Carter. Cast of Wonders is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can download or listen to the episode on any device you like, but you can't change it or sell it. Our theme music is Appeal to Heavens by Alexei Nov, available from Promo DJ or his Facebook page. Thank you for listening.